Spoilers for Succession. It's a pleasure for being here to honor our boy's life and work. So when Waystar was planning this thing, they asked me to help out with a tribute of a certain flavor. And after a lot of convincing, well, here we are. My boy Grego's cooked this beat. Born in the Midwest, servant to the big Roy, 20 years strong, now he's rolling with the stick boy, name brand suits, embezzling loot. Almost in prison, y'all best salute. Yo, Shiffy beat Caddy, now I'm her baby daddy. Mock all the haters while Greg brings a baggie. Grego's on decks, Hizzy on the rhymes, and Tommy Wambs balling past Logan's prime. T to the O-M, CEO is him, ATN he planning. Playing with his broski. T to the O-M, CEO is him, ATN he planning. Playing with his broski. 3% growth, toilet wine. Never see him napping, F a bedtime. Bro, don't get it twisted, he's not doing well. But since I stand Tom, he's alive for now. Nero of Rome, taker of chicken. Cuck to many, this man's grief stricken. So open up your mouth, close the loop, and bore on the floor to hail the king. T to the O-M, CEO is him, ATN he planning. Playing with his broski. T to the O-M, CEO is him, ATN he planning. Playing with his broski. When I say T, you say O-M. T to the 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 M-F-N-O-M. Over a year ago, I made this video about Tom Wambsgans because he quickly became my outright favorite character of Succession because of how interesting of a character he was in relation to the rest of the cast.
I work in hospitality, Charlotte, okay, so I can smell the bullshit.
And while I think the response was mostly positive,
they love me.
I think there was a decent amount of reasonable feedback on how I viewed the character. I was planning on addressing some of these after episode 7 in a separate video, but part of me was still holding out for the Kendall vs. Tom final matchup that seemed like an apparent possible endpoint since season 2. And we won't get to the finale just yet, we'll get there, but I wanted to take a moment to briefly further explain a couple of repeated comments I received. I mentioned Tom wants a nuclear family, and that might have been the wrong way to explain it. Tom wants stability with Shiv by default. He wants control of his life. The possibility of not brown-nosing literally everyone to keep scraping by. He craves acceptance. But he is not given that from Shiv continually, which can lead Tom to betraying Shiv for Logan, which he is notably shown asking Logan if they are good at the start of this season, again, looking for that approval. I think there are a lot of characters that would be willing to accept a role of less power if they weren't pushed off a cliff. For example, Kendall has such admiration for his father and probably could be a more subservient son if he weren't made the martyr for the finale of season 2. I also received a lot of blowback on saying he loved Shiv more than advancing in the company, and while this is definitely opinionated, it's repeatedly shown he actually cares somewhat about Shiv's well-being, besides when he's coked out on election night.
On crack.
I recognize there's a lot of great purposeful ambiguity to some of these dynamics, but just going on the text,
I'm with you because I love you!
Bullshit!
There's so many times Tom seems to really want to be with Shiv. We see him fight for their relationship to exist numerous times at the wedding, the beach, even their huge arguments feel like he's trying to salvage whatever is left. And apparently there was a little issue with my music for non-headphone users having trouble hearing me talk. Well, how about this? Can you hear me okay now, Bridget? Whew. Sorry, I don't know what came over me. With that out of the way, I obviously want to take this golden opportunity to talk about Tom this season. That I'm not gonna lie and having some mixed feelings about for this season, possibly because the big Tom-centric episode in America Decides might have been my least favorite of the bunch.
Move this man!
Which I totally get why so many other people loved it, and despite these complicated feelings, I love this season on the whole too. So the main episodes I'd like to take a look at for Tom are The Kill List, Tailgate Party, and the finale.
Sir! Sir! Wow. Whirlwind, huh?
Starting with the kill list, because this is actually where we see Tom at his lowest. After crossing the Roy children, it would seem like a mistake to burn a bridge like that after Logan's passing. On top of that, the threat of the Gojo deal is making it possible for a full reset for his progress he's made at ATN. And in trying to foster a new relationship, he completely whiffs. Strike 1 with Oscar, strike 2 with the Swedes table, then strike 3 when Shiv calls him a spelunker. Tom was on top of the world with the finale of season 3, and to see him get a complete reset despite being somewhat loyal to Waystar was an interesting choice. And yet, by some last minute magic, Shiv is back flirting with him and he's off of the kill list by the end of the episode. Which this was the first time I recognized Shiv as a possibility for CEO and First Lady Tom as the trophy husband.
So it's election eve, and guess what Father Sexmas has brought you? Why? Hot, fresh polling.
Then there was the tailgate party, my second favorite episode of this season, that delivered a huge acting showcase from McFadden. Both him and Snook deliver this perfect explosion of feelings that haven't been said out loud, but have clearly been on their minds continually. But let's examine the opening for a moment, the Scorpion gift.
Look at this. Fucking Scorpion party.
I'm sure a decent amount of you read many think pieces on the Scorpion gift and how it is likely drawing on the Frog and Scorpion fable, but just in case you missed that, here's a brief summary of the old fable.
A scorpion wants to cross a river, but cannot swim, so it asks a frog to carry it across. The frog hesitates, afraid that the scorpion might sting it, but the scorpion promises not to, pointing out that it would drown if it killed the frog in the middle of the river. The frog considers this argument sensible and agrees to transport the scorpion. Midway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog anyway, dooming them both. The dying frog asks the scorpion why it stung despite knowing the consequence, to which the scorpion replies, "I'm sorry, but I couldn't resist the urge. It's in my nature."
And a lot of people just left it as this. Shiv is a scorpion and Tom is the gentle frog.
Perhaps no?
I think there's a little more complexity to their dynamic than that. We've seen Tom deliberately hurt Shiv twice this season prior to this gift, once with the flicking of lobes and the other with the rousing game of bitey. Tom might be a frog, but one that has now been made to defy his nature. He wants to love his wife, but Shiv craves someone to match her viciousness. So now, instead of the frog and the scorpion traveling across the water, it's just a frog pretending to be a scorpion and a scorpion drowning in the water because it is now in both of their natures.
I love you, but you kill me and I kill you.
Oh.
And there's an interesting thing about scorpions and their mating rituals. Female scorpions fight their mates for the male to prove they are strong enough to be their partner. And how does the series end for Tom? With a newly appointed CEO holding hands with his scorpion in the car, now a proven partner.
That's never happened before in my life. I've never had my plans ruined by a huge board meeting before. Well,
Oh, you wanted more on the finale? Right, the finale. Big thoughts. Big thoughts.
Big day on the old salami line, huh?
I felt a little disingenuous when quite a few comments came rolling in applauding me after the finale, because even though I did think while writing that video there were only 2 viable options to replace Logan in Tom or Kendall, I didn't really say that in my video. But on the actual finale, at first I was pretty indifferent to it, mostly due to the shocking betrayal that Shiv pulled in the initial viewing. I guess in my head I was expecting a Godfather-esque Michael Corleone moment for Kendall as a final shot showing how the poison does in fact drip through. So I was stewing on this indifference and simultaneously given praise that felt fraudulent, and I may have made the mistake of going down the internet rabbit hole to see what generally people were saying. And many opinions there were. But what was fascinating to me is that of these opinions that I didn't think in my head, I still found a lot of them to be valid interpretations of the show despite disagreeing with them without their argument defending it. Like, you may think Kendall dies at the ending scene of the series. Jeremy Strong certainly thinks he did. But there were also a lot of people that drew a parallel to when Logan is sitting by himself staring into the ocean from season 1. You could say that Tom and Shiv are in a relationship built on business motives, and I couldn't tell you that you're wrong, even though I view it more as acceptance of their flawed relationship that might be happy for fleeting moments, but will likely follow the same cycle from before. You could tell me the hug Roman and Kendall share at the end is Kendall showing his dominance, or that it's Kendall doing this as a favor from Roman to make him look less pitiful. There's so many ways to interpret a span of 5 minutes that at first I had some hesitancy towards, until I realized even though I thought Shiv making her choice was out of nowhere, there were a lot smarter people than I pointing out several instances of Kendall's hubris that forced her to back out of her decision. This is something I think will age the show so well because it will create so many arguments on where these characters would be if there ever was a 5th season. And on top of that, I kind of had this cynical view about Jesse Armstrong's need to not give the audience exactly what they seek for the finale. Like, for instance, not caring about who wins in Succession. But then I listened to an interview on The Watch, and shocker to no one, he was incredibly well spoken and even mentioned it would be disingenuous to act like they didn't want people to care about who won in a show called Succession.
Surprising, well, not surprising, but I rubbed me the wrong way as a fan of the show, I think, was this sort of narrative that there were winners and losers. Not to put words in your mouth, if this struck you as a very American sensibility.
No, I think it would be a bit disingenuous to write a show called Succession and have everyone wondering and talking about constantly who would take over, and then to profess like, oh, you shouldn't be interested in that.
That's fair.
And then I actually thought about the ending, and it actually hits a lot of the marks you'd want for a finale. There's a big fight between the siblings, a fun hang amidst the chaos of the boardroom vote, a final moment for Logan Roy, and the return of so many core characters, including everyone's favorite, Stewie.
He's gay, but he has a special connection to
pancakes and waffles.
There's many things that are interesting about it.
So I don't even know if that view I had would even be right. It was outside opinions influencing how I reacted to this show, which hadn't happened before because I caught up for season 3 of this show, and most of my conversations while watching that were just texting one friend about how incredible this show was. This influence was felt when a wave of people rushed to crown this the best finale ever, or the 10 idiots shouting about how this was worse than the Game of Thrones finale. And I didn't even have time to fully gather thoughts on Succession's finale, much less where it ranks, because I was right on to Barry minutes after the credits rolled of Succession. And there's this funny thing that happened for my original ending for this video of trying to force in Succession and Shakespeare. A lot of people have been chattering on the heavy draw this series takes from Shakespeare, the talk of the town this season.
He's so hot right now.
And there's this fantastic video essay by Overthinking It detailing this comparison that will be linked down below. But I was again just letting other people influence my thoughts with this take. And even though there is an inarguable amount of comparisons to King Lear and many other Shakespearean tragedies, I didn't really have anything interesting to say about this. So stumped on this idea, I spoke to a friend about my predicament and gave him this whole spiel, and he rattled off this amazing pull of how Shakespeare is, in the large scheme of things, still very current. And the actual origin of tragedy is Greek.
And what specifically do you find interesting about that period of history?
The scale, the tragedy.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and which tragedies specifically?
Which reminded me of some of the comments I had in my original video about Tom. Kendall and Roman being two sides of the same Oedipus coin, Kendall's quest being Sisyphean, Shiv can slide right into the Medea role. No, not that one. A lot of these archetypes from Succession feel so weighty because they've been in our universe for centuries upon centuries that are modernized so well into the series. There's something about the elite class that feels so far removed from my everyday life. Influential, surely, but in the way Greek tragedies of old shape our fundamental understanding of story. But it doesn't stop there. Much like the way both Barry and Succession came out on the same day, Greek tragedies were performed in the Great Dionysia, where they would do plays in succession of one another, then judge what was the best play at the end. So as much as I had hesitation to judge people for rushing to proclaim Succession's finale in the greater scheme of all the other finales. We have literally been doing this since the dawn of tragedy. And just like the Greeks of old, I will be doing the same, comparing two finales of HBO's series Succession and Barry. Tom 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 Tom.
I've got this pathetically weak bladder. I'm like an old woman who's had a baby somehow, so I'm gonna. But I'm so sorry. I'll be right back. Okay.